Alright, you're looking at a funny picture because I'm just talking. This is just notes to myself I'm sharing with you. And what you look at is not too important, I hope. Just close your eyes and focus. This is a follow-up to another video, so they all share the same title, part 1 and part 2. These are some additional thoughts. The simulation is not what it would happen in the real world, and of course the wiring of Tesla's special generator is a mystery. We don't know that. Thomas Comerford Martin was not given a diagram, a schematic of how things are wired, so we have to guess, and we can't assume unless we do so in some sort of intelligent manner. And I'm beginning to suspect or wonder, let's say I'm wondering whether or not William Lyne's statement to me that the electromechanical water emitter is a watered-down version of Tesla's special generator, if that statement might also apply to the conventional Tesla coil that is bandied about as Tesla's coil, which of course it isn't, because there's more to it than that. But in any case, what if there's something, an interesting feature of that of the conventional version of a Tesla coil, and that is the center coil, which I believe is called the primary, although I always thought of it as the secondary, but be that as it may, I had it backwards. Okay, so it's got a top load on top, that toroidal, looks like somebody took the ductwork out of a dryer and turned it around on itself to make a donut. That top load is one end of an open path. The other end goes to earth ground through that tightly wound, many turns coil of very thin wire in the center of a so-called Tesla coil. So what I'm beginning to wonder is, concerning the wiring of Tesla's special generator, is everything closed loop, or is something left as an open path on purpose to make the thing work? It's not enough all the other things William Lyne has mentioned, and Thomas Comerford Martin, and anything else I've speculated. What if there's a line that's left open, and it has to be? Well, the story that this applies to is the Electro U-boat that the Nazis outfitted specifically for Tesla's special generator during World War II. And that means that if the hull is being used as a magnetic sink and a thermal sink, what if it's also earth ground through the ocean water, a perfect conductor? What if one terminal of the M coils, or one of the M coils, goes to the hull of the ship? And maybe not left as an open path all the time, but some of the time. In other words, there's an analog switch in here functioning just like in my simulator at a specific timing, which is exactly periodic, never varies, and my simulation is directed to function at 100 cycles per second. But regardless, since the piston action of the reciprocating piston acts like a reed of a wind instrument and has a constant periodicity, what if it's opening and closing a switch, not unlike what I do in my simulation at is.gd/core mass, COREMASS, or add induct, ADDINDUCT. Core mass is the pre-charged one that's already ready to go, ready to run at a specific output level comparable to what an electric vehicle would require. But of course, in all likelihood, the best way to analyze this is to look at the requirements of an electric U-boat battery bank that needs recharging, because that's what the special generator was used for. So I'm wondering if there is not an open path in the circuit somewhere. And my guess would be the M coils, because the H coils have to deliver energy to the battery bank to recharge them. Now, I could be wrong. Could be the open path is there on the H coils, delivering their load, or delivering their supply to the load, which is the recharging of the battery bank in an electro U-boat. I don't know. It could be either one or the other, probably not both. Probably one is an open path, either the H coil or the M coil, but not both. But that's what I'm guessing, because I'm guessing, or speculating, or have a hunch, that the open path is analogous to the center coil of a conventional Tesla coil, in which that coil is an open path. One end goes to the top load, the torus, let's say, shape that is empty inside and is just a structure of aluminum, thin foil aluminum, and the other end goes to earth ground. In the case of an electro U-boat situation, I have no idea what would be. Well, no, wait a minute. It could be the aluminum rod on the inside of. Oh. No, it would be the copper or brass pipe that connects the two aluminum rods together as a single unit of a shaft that reciprocates between both pair of H coils. That's the top load. So, okay, my guess is that the H coils are the open path. Because it makes sense, because the M coils function as a field coil arrangement. So they have to be a closed loop. Conventional closed loop to set up an electromagnetic field, because the inductance is so high. Why not? Duh. But the H coils can be different. Now, I assumed they were counterwound pair of coils in each pair. Could be wrong. Yeah, I assume that from the diagram, but I could be very wrong. I have no way of knowing. Because if they're an open path, I don't think it's going to make much difference. So it's, counterwound goes out the window. But an open path in which one end is the top load, namely the brass coupling between the two aluminum rods, and the other end of that open path is earth ground, namely the, now there's a problem with that. Because the earth ground is the hull of the ship. I mean, that's the so-called grounding rod going to earth ground. And yet that so-called grounding rod is a mass of iron, a massive amount of iron, magnetically coupled to the iron core of the M coils, which is the two horseshoe laminate cores. That means we have a closed loop, because what starts, let's say, in the H coils, wraps around and goes via the hull of the ship, wraps around and goes to, or ends up at, the laminate horseshoe core of the M coils, which makes it a closed loop. Magnetically speaking, in a sense, yes, in a sense. Magnetically speaking, at the very least. A magnetic loop. So we actually have a hidden loop here in this special generator of Tesla, via the hull. Who would have known? And not only is it magnetic, but it's also current. It's both, I think. It would end up being that way. It's just like if you had a loop circuit and one end terminates on a capacitor plate and the other end loops around and terminates on the opposite capacitor plate. That's an entire circuit, even though we have it cut in the middle via the dielectric of the capacitor. Now, in the case of a battery, it's not a good analogy, although it's close, but not quite the same as using a capacitor, because it's not cut in the middle, it's inverted, so that the current, if we say in conventional terms, exits the positive pole of the battery and enters the negative external to the battery. It goes in reverse direction internal to the battery in order to complement what's happening outside the battery through the membrane, if it's a dry cell battery, separating the two dry cells of the two terminals, the positive and negative terminal. So in order to balance out, the electrical energy has to go in one direction outside the battery, but it has to go in the opposite direction between its two terminals inside the battery. So that's not a good example. A capacitor would be a better example because we have an actual break in the circuit, the dielectric of the capacitor. So this is interesting. This adds a third loop, implied because of how it's set up in conjunction with the hull of the electro U-boat that it's powering to recharge. I mean, it's trying to recharge its battery bank so that, it has access to its diesel generators to recharge the battery bank, but it also, as a second option, it has the option to make use of Tesla special generators so that it ends up with unlimited range. Now, if the diesel generators can recharge the battery bank quicker, that would be good under situations in which the electro U-boat is suffering a certain amount of demands made upon it by its captain because they are in the middle of a war. But if they're just cruising around the oceans, they're in no great hurry to get anywhere, then they could fall back on the special generator and conserve their diesel fuel that will be used under more demanding situations that would require its use for a very quick recharge of the battery banks. So the diesel generators have a higher amperage output than, by implication, this line of reasoning, by comparison to Tesla special generator outfitted inside here. So the Tesla special generator outfitted is quite small. It's meant for a trickle charge, basically, by comparison to the diesel charging system. And it's not a good comparison in terms of its mass, in overall dimensions, by comparison to what would be required, let's say, to run a building in today's world, a home, or worse, or similarly an electric car, or worse, power a portion of our power grid's needs, namely a neighborhood, what a substation might cover. But that's, I think, the way to look at this. So I set out to make the video on one premise, and I learned two whole new things that I didn't even imagine before setting out to record these thoughts of mine. That's why I love doing these videos. They're very inspiring. You can tell I've been a geek all my life, talking to myself, or at least imagining in my mind that I'm thinking to myself as my own, not only best audience, but only audience, because that's the isolated life I led. And I still keep doing. But no, I interact with people on occasion, but anywho. So I like this a lot. This sounds really good. It's awesome, and who would have known, to be able to make progress at this point, even though I'm not doing any simulating. I have sworn an oath to stay away from doing any more simulations because I really had enough, and I feel I've done enough. But I've always suspected that on occasion, post-haste, or not post-haste, over-the-shoulder, analysis of some work I've already done, I may continue to come up with ideas once in a great while. And here's a pair of videos to fulfill that expectation that I've had, which is not at all unreasonable because here I am doing it. So, sounds good. Sounds really good. So, I'll shut up and post this video. Why not? Thank you for listening, even though you have nothing but a wall to look at. Sorry. It's the thought that counts. There's nothing here for show. But part 1 has something to show. So, if you saw this part and thinking, oh shit, I'm not going to bother watching the first video. No, trust me. The first video is more interesting. You know, it's got visual aids. You know, it's a screencast off my computer monitor. But this is the follow-up, the thoughts I didn't think of at the time that I was making that video that I feel I need to add. So I'm using my sports camera with a fisheye lens, and rather than point it at my nose to make it look huge, and pointed up my nose hairs, which somebody complained, "Oh, God, come on, can't you do it another way? I don't want to look at your nose hairs and your big nose." Okay, so you look at a wall instead.